Fantastic, and we're live. Yeah, thank you very much for attending on this wet and dreary autumn morning. Fortunately, the spirits in the room are slightly higher than that. Certainly were pre-kicking off this morning. So yeah, we've got a fantastic session today. We've got Jackie and also Kelly Vickers, and basically going to walk through, you know, health, well-beingness, and all the good stuff that we really need, especially on these dark autumn mornings. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Kelly, I believe. Is that correct, Kelly?
Yeah, fabulous. Yes.
Fantastic.
Let me take control of the screen. Make sure this is going to work.
Excellent. We can
Is that
see
working?
Yep, perfect.
We're good to go.
Good to go.
Good morning, everybody. It's fantastic to see so many of you here today. We're absolutely delighted to share with you what we know about physical activity for good mental health with you this morning. So my name is Kelly Vickers and I am Head of Business Development at Living Sport. Some of you may know Living Sport, some of you may not, but very quickly, we are a charity that is dedicated to inspiring activity, and we work with a wide range of partners across the county, and we do lots of exciting projects and events to help you keep busy and keep active. So delighted to share our thoughts with you this morning. I have two things to say before we start, which will be relevant as we go through the presentation. The first is, I'm not a zebra, and I'm going to explain to you why that's the case later on. And the second is that I hope through this initial presentation, this is the start of something really exciting, because I have a plan to build an army of activity ambassadors, and I want you on my team. And I share the platform this morning with my very good friend, Jackie Kemp, who I will pass the microphone over to now.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you for inviting me to share the platform with you today. So as Kelly said, I'm Jackie Kemp. I run Your People Potential, and it's my mission to obliterate the stigma around mental health in the workplace. And I do that through a series of talks like this, helping people to understand more about mental health, and also through training, coaching, and therapeutic support for individuals in a work environment and also in a one-to-one environment. That's all I need to say about me.
Fabulous. So the presentation this morning is a little bit interactive, which is going to be challenging, because for those of you who have used Zoom before will know that when you go full screen, and that isn't going to work, so I'm just going to have to go back again, excuse me, that when you go full screen on Zoom, you actually lose the chat. So Jackie is going to manage the chat for me, and we're going to start by showing you what we're going to talk about this morning. So here's a rough idea of the content that we're going to cover. There's quite a lot of ground to cover, so we're going to move quite quickly. So the first part is the interactive part. We've got a quick activity quiz. So we're going to ask you to pop your answers in the chat, if you wouldn't mind doing that. We're going to move through some health perceptions, differentiating between mental and physical health, moving on to benefits of activity and looking at stress response, and then thinking about how we can get you moving. So looking at that sedentary behaviour, looking at how we can make small changes, and ending with some signposting and some tips. So if you're ready for my interactive quiz, I'm going to have to keep moving you from one side of the screen to the other. So question number 1, how much physical activity is recommended per week for UK adults? A, 30 minutes, B, some is good, more is better, or 150 minutes a week, or 75 minutes of vigorous activity? Your answers, please.
There's a few coming in. It's all split between A and C at the moment.
Interesting.
C has just gone up a bit more. Oh, now A's caught up.
I can see
it's pretty much looking at that. It's a fair old 50-50 split between A and C, I think.
Interesting. Well, the answer is actually, well, B is true, but C is the answer. So actually, the guidelines suggest that you should be moving for 150 minutes each week or 75 minutes of vigorous activity. And that's from the British Journal of Sport Medicine report from 2019 that suggests that just a 50-minute jog once a week is enough to make a difference, and to reduce the chance of premature death by 27%. So it's hugely significant, just every little piece of activity that you undertake. Question number 2. How active are UK adults using these guidelines? Are we 19% active, 28% active, or 63% active?
Okay, there are a few coming in, not many. Oh, got B, B, C. Someone said 25, which is C.
How you're tabulating this in real time, Jackie, is amazing. I'm just saying.
So it looks like there's a fair split across all three. We should have done this as a poll, I'm just realising, because it would be a lot easier.
I didn't realise we were going to have all these people, but it's lovely.
No.
The answer is C. So we're actually 63% active, and that's counting moderate activity of 10 minutes or more. And we'll come on to talk about that a little bit more later. What counts towards the recommended activity target? I've just given you the answer, haven't I? Activity in bouts of 10 minutes or more. That'll allow me to get ahead of myself. Question number 4. Does physical activity make a difference to sickness absence levels at work? Do active workers take 27% less sick days, 11% less sick days, or do they take slightly more sick days because they have more accidents?
Injury. So they're all coming in as A at the moment.
It is A. It's 27% less sick days if you have an active workforce. So that's not an inconsiderable amount of money to consider when you're looking at your absentee figures. So how much does all of this inactivity cost UK business each year, do we think? 4.4 billion, 5.5 billion, or 6.6 billion?
Okay, we've got 1 vote so far. Nope, we've got a few now coming in, and they're all looking at C.
It is. It's 6.6 billion. But when you factor in the mental health aspects of this, it rises very quickly to over 40 billion, which is why we're looking at the two together today and looking at the intrinsic links between them. Final question of the quiz. Which of the following is true? Physical activity can reduce risk of depression, help to manage stress and anxiety, boost well-being, improve mood, higher self-esteem, and better sleep.
Yeah, everyone's coming in with all.
It's true. It's true. It can help with everything. And I think finding ourselves as we do now at the end of a very challenging year, it's interesting to look even at older statistics, which suggested that as much as 1 in 6 adults experience a common mental health problem at any one time. And pre-COVID, 74% of adults reported feeling so stressed that they were overwhelmed and unable to cope. But only 43% of those would consider talking to their manager about their stress or their anxiety. Further, the same ACAS survey suggested that 73% of employees felt that it was their manager's responsibility to deal with their stress, which is an interesting thing to consider. So let's have a look at how the two are linked, and I'm going to hand you over to Jackie.
Thank you, Kelly. So we're going to talk a little bit about mental health and physical health. And following on from what Kelly was just saying and the stats that she was sharing, I read last week from the ONS report in June that there is now, since COVID, instances of depression have gone up to 19.8% of adults have experienced depression during the coronavirus outbreak. And before coronavirus, it was actually 9.2%. So it's more than doubled. So it's now, it's nearly 1 in 5 people, as opposed to nearly 1 in 10 people experiencing depression. And they're seeing direct links for coronavirus and poor mental health. So when we think about mental health, I think what a lot of people think, especially in the work environment, is that we're only talking about poor mental health. But actually, we all have mental health. And we need to think about mental health as a continuum. It's something that we all have and something that we all experience, the same as we all have physical health. Some of us have good physical health, some of us have good mental health, but it's something that's moving all the time. And as those statistics for the ONS share with us, it is a moving feast and anything can impact our mental health. And what I'm seeing and what the statistics brought up was that there's a lot more new instances of people suffering with their mental health since coronavirus came along. So it's not just people who've previously experienced poor mental health. There are a lot of people for whom they've never had a problem with their mental health in the past. They've never struggled with it. Potentially, they've never really understood it. And I know that I've worked with business owners and senior leaders over the last few months who now understand that you don't have to be a particular type of person to struggle with your mental health, because they've started to notice it in themselves, or people who they might previously have thought would never experience poor mental health. And while I don't want anybody to experience poor mental health and to be struggling, it's actually helping that organisations and that senior leaders are starting to experience this, because they are starting to get a better level of understanding of it. So if we think about the links between mental health and physical health, it's been proven that if we have, and as Kelly shared, if we have poor physical health, it is linked intrinsically to our mental health. And equally, our mental health is linked intrinsically to our physical health. So if we are struggling with one or the other, the two will impact. And that's because we're 100% one human being. We cannot divorce physical health from mental health. I mean, how many people have just had a cold and it makes you feel really, can't be bothered, don't want to do this. Equally, if you're struggling with anxiety or depression, you are more likely to end up having accidents, having physical ailments, having musculoskeletal issues. And it's all because of the way that we hold our bodies, and our bodies and mind are so connected that we cannot just separate the two. I look forward to a day when we are talking just about our health, and we're not talking about our mental health and our physical health, but we are just talking about holistically, how are we? What's going on for you? How do you feel today? And if you think about physical health compared to mental health, which one do you believe that you know more about? So if you could put in the chat, do you know more about your physical health, or do you know more about mental health? What are we more aware of in the modern world now? I think mental health is getting a lot more media coverage. Yeah. So some people know pretty much the same about physical and mental health, but a lot of people are aware more around about physical health rather than their mental health. And it's because we've been allowed to talk about it for so much longer. 10, 20 years ago, you could go to work and you say, yeah, so some people are more aware of mental health and how to manage it. But 10, 20 years ago, you could go to work and you could say, I've really damaged my back this weekend, or I've got a cold, or I'm not feeling so great. but would always be around our physical health. 10, 20 years ago, when I had depression, I was not telling my organisation that I had depression. I was ringing in with a bad back and not going to work because of my bad back, because there's no way they would have accepted me talking about depression. Whereas now, people want to talk about depression, they want to know more about it, and organisations are becoming more open to it. And we need to keep that going. We need to keep those conversations going. And while we're working remotely, it's even more important to have those conversations. So how many of you since lockdown, the first or the second, have had conversations about your colleagues and co-workers about yours or their mental health or mental well-being? Anyone want to put in the chat whether you've had those conversations? Thank you, Sophie. I'm really glad to hear that you have. And Ian, thank you. Excellent. So some of you are having those conversations, which is brilliant. And I think that coronavirus has allowed those conversations and has made people think about it a lot more. And we need to be sharing that a lot more. We need to be reaching out and having those conversations and making the effort, because it is so easy to hide behind remote working. That's all I have to say about that slide. Does someone want to move it on? Am I capable of moving it on? I don't think I can. Thank you. So if we think about mental health and stress, we need to think about the stress response. And stress in itself is not a mental health issue. But stress, prolonged stress, can lead to poor mental health. And when our stress response is triggered, it triggers our freeze, flight, and fright system. Freeze, flight, and fight, not fright system. So what happens then is we automatically, the first thing that happens when our stress response is triggered is that we do freeze. And that's because back in the day, and I've said this so many times, when we came out of our caves, there was a saber-toothed tiger there. We had to freeze. And that freeze was about working out, do I stay here, will it go past, or do I need to run? Then the second activity that we do is that we're designed to run, get away from the danger. And only if we can't get away from it are we then meant to fight to save our lives. It is supposed to be a very quick system that runs through the body. We get a hormone dump. They move out through the body as we burn them off, as we're fighting or running or whatever it is that we're doing. But it's supposed to be a really, really quick system. We no longer have saber-toothed tigers. We still have the same stress response. And if we think about lockdown, that has forced us into freeze. We can't run. If we're in lockdown and something's going on, we can't get away from that danger, that thing that is triggering. And it might even be the news, what's going on around us. It might be that that's triggering our stress response to what's happening. We cannot burn off those stress hormones. We stay in that freeze mode for far too long. That leads to anxiety, and that leads to depression. So we can have people with anxiety, depression, or if we think about furlough, if there is a lack of pressure and a lack of reason to get out of bed in the morning, that can then lead to boredom, which in itself is not a mental health issue, but prolonged boredom can lead to depression. So if you think about the people who were furloughed and who may still be on furlough, it's important to check in with them as well and make sure that they're okay, and not just check in with the people who are still working, and check that they are keeping active, that they've got stuff going on, that they are doing things that work for them. That's all I have to say on that slide.
So now I'm going to explain why I'm not a zebra. So zebras in the plains are obviously constantly moving away from their attackers, being prey. And because they are constantly on the move, they burn up all of those enzymes and hormones that build up through that stress response. And it is therefore scientifically acknowledged that zebras don't get stomach ulcers. If only that were true for people. So
That's a fun fact.
good fun fact for you there. So what are the benefits of being active and why are they absolutely critical? And I'm not going to read this slide to you verbatim because you can see the numbers there across body, across mind, and then looking at, you know, not only personal benefits, but looking at business benefits. So we talked about that statistic of 27% less days taken sick by active employees. We have this new concern of presenteeism, where we have colleagues who are working, you know, before the children go to school and after the children go to school, and working extraordinarily long hours. Presenteeism is a genuine concern for a lot of employers at the moment. Looking at performance, productivity, I think there are so many positive, beyond bottom line issues that encouraging employees to be active can deliver, that we would be crazy not to look at this. If you think about all of the hormones that come out from physical activity, all your happy hormones, so your oxytocin, your endorphins, your dopamines, your serotonins, all of those hormones are going to counteract the stress hormones that we just spoke about, and that the zebras are so much better at getting rid of than we are. I've just realised why I can't move that on with the keyboard. There we go. So Dr. Nick Cavil, a public health specialist, and I think this has been used a lot by different people, but this is the quote that I've taken. If physical activity was a pill, it would be the most cost-effective drug ever invented. And I think if we all recall a lifetime's visits to the GPs, pretty much for everything but a broken leg, it will be suggested that you increase your activity. And it doesn't have to cost the earth. And we're not talking about gym membership, we're talking about moving a little bit more. So separating physical activity from sedentary behaviour, because they are different things. So you could be very physically active, you could be running 10K 3 times a week, but if you also sit still for 9 hours a day, that's actually as bad for you. So if Mo Farah does his marathon at the weekend and then he doesn't move all week, he is as likely to suffer from some long-term health conditions as somebody who doesn't move at all. So thinking about how long you sit still for and your physical activity differently, I think is really important, and probably not something that we tend to differentiate from outside of a scientific scenario. There's no specific guidance, but it has been suggested that if you are sitting still for more than 3 or 4 hours at a time, then you're really not doing yourself any favors. Actually, the most current guidelines suggest that you should be moving for 1 to 2 minutes for every half an hour that you're sitting still. And I think if I recall the times that I've been sat at this desk over the last 7-8 months, I know that I've sat still for longer than half an hour. I do try, when I go and put the kettle on, to run up and down the stairs to make sure that I get some blood flow in my leg. But the scary statistics for long-term health conditions, and thrombosis in particular, DVT, are really quite concerning. And for those of you that do sit still, I would strongly recommend getting a foot flow device to make you fidget with your feet, so you keep the blood flow in your legs going during that time. So how can we get you moving? What can we do? If we were a smaller group, we would invite you. Maybe we can invite you to put some ideas in the chat. But thinking about breaking up your day, so many of us aren't commuting at the moment. Is there the opportunity for you to have a fake commute Could you do a walk around the block before you start your day's work, or a cycle around the block, or do you run in the mornings? What can you do during the day? Many of us now are fortunate enough to be able to work flexibly. I think this is one of the positive things that will come out of the horrible year that we've had. Can you use your time during the day to get out in the daylight? Can you have a half hour while the sun's out? And not today, obviously, because it's blooming grey, but to get some daylight, to get that vitamin D, because that's hugely important. Can you do things with your colleagues? We'd be delighted to set up virtual challenges if you want to go head to head with your colleagues or into organisational competitions. And I have some plans next year to do a workplace challenge to see if we can get some competition going between the Cambridge and Peterborough companies, to see if we can get you going against each other, to see what we can achieve in terms of miles or steps, or I don't know, lots of ideas to think about. Can you do something in the evening with your family? It was easier in the summer when we had the lighter evenings and we could all get out for a walk after work. There are lots of opportunities. I think the most important thing that I can stress is plan it. Put it in your diary, block the time out, because if you don't, your time will fill up, probably like mine, like water does, take over a glass, and there will be no time left. You absolutely owe it to yourselves, your family, and your employer, actually, to make moving a priority.
So can we ask people to put in the chat if you've done anything in this past lockdown, in this last 4 weeks that we've had this lockdown? Have you done anything differently? Have you had any step challenges that you've done, or have you walked to work even though you're working at home and things like that? So Soraya, thank you. During the weekday, if you're working from home, clean something for 2 minutes an hour. Oh no. No. Windows, vacuum, mop, do a couple of minutes every hour, then you've got a clean house too. That's a brilliant idea for anyone who enjoys house.
I like that.
I don't. So Hannah, lunchtime walks, and you challenge yourself to find one new 30-minute route each week. That's a good idea, because I'm doing morning walks before work every day, and I tend to have the same route, and every now and then I'll turn left instead of right and find a new way through the estate, but because it's so muddy, I'm sticking to the paths as well. Maybe consider using yo-yo desks for office home working. What's a yo-yo desk? Is that a standing desk?
Standing desk. Or an ironing board.
Yep, they're the right height. Absolutely. Better in first lockdown. This one's been worse to get motivated. And you've got a dog. Well done, Sophie. So yeah, the dog definitely helps ensure you get out. If you're finding it hard to get motivated, I'd ask you to think about what makes the difference this time around. Is it the weather? Is it the lack of daylight hours? Are you finding it hard to fit in when it's actually light to do it? Daisy, you do lunch walks. Excellent. Has anyone set up challenges? Has anyone done a step challenge? I did a step challenge for November. I think I did. I'll go and have a look at what I did. It was on Stride Kick. It was a group of 4 of us. I did a lot of steps. A lot of steps. I was the worst. I think the highest one did 700,000 steps over November. I did 397,000. I thought that was good.
Good effort. That's a very good effort.
I was doing 2-hour walks every Monday morning with a friend of mine who's also in the walking challenge. So things like that can really help to motivate. And also if you do walk-in meetings as well. So if you factor it into the workday, you can have a walking meeting, and even if you're both in 2 different towns, take your phone, have a walk, have a chat on the phone while you're walking, and it just helps to put in that activity into your everyday life. Also, some people do steps while they're waiting for the kettle to boil, which could be quite good. Some people mop the kitchen as they wait for the kettle to boil. I wouldn't do that. I'm not a fan of housework. My husband does most.
I think taking the little gaps, those 2 or 3 minutes where you're waiting to go on a Zoom call, stand up and if you can move a little bit, do some star jumps or some squats, and you'd be surprised how just doing little things can actually make a huge difference. So if you wear a Fitbit or a watch that counts, then that will show you how quickly those little bits can add up to
They really do.
sizable.
Had another comment in the chat, and I think this is something that people do need to take back to their workplaces. It said it'd be good if workplaces could try and avoid scheduling lunchtime video calls, as it makes it harder to get out, especially as the evening's so dark. And if you miss lunchtime, you won't go out. I think that's something that we need to go back to organisations, and you need to have those conversations and say, look, can we stop scheduling Zoom calls for lunch? Maybe schedule a Zoom call for lunch for anybody who wants to connect over lunch, but not for meetings.
We actually, it's in Living Sport, we have blocked out between 12 and 2. We don't have any internal meetings for that part of the day for that exact reason. So we will have the opportunity to get outside during the day.
Yeah, so great thought, Hannah, and it's worth having that conversation and taking that back and saying, hey, Living Sport, block out 12 till 2, no meetings. Can we do the same?
I think that's awesome that Living Sport do that as well, because it removes the guilt in you taking and participating in something. You're not thinking in the back of your mind, maybe I should have been doing something else. So yeah, commendable. Definitely.
I suppose, I mean, it's what we do, so it would be disappointing if we didn't, but we're also allowed to take time out flexibly if we want to do classes during the day. So if somebody wants to do gymnastics or yoga and their classes at 11 o'clock, then we're all about outcomes. We work very hard, we all work our hours, so I think we have a very forward thinking CEO, so we're incredibly lucky. I know that's not possible for everybody, but it's worth starting the discussion, because I think we have to take the positives out of the situation that we found ourselves in this year, where so many of us are now working differently. I think it's quite an exciting opportunity.
It's also as well, when you go back to the presenteeism and the whole kind of sat at the desk for way too long and various other pieces, that your own personal time management becomes more important now than it ever has been. Previously, there's 42,000 people in the business that I worked with, and they all had access to my calendar globally, and they were just, so you'd wake up some mornings, you'd have nothing in your calendar, and 15 minutes later, you were blocked out the entire day. So you had a personal responsibility, and I mean the entire day as well, through to midnight. So you had a personal responsibility to learn to block out your calendar when you needed personal time. And I think that that's a skill that people through lockdown are starting to learn. But also as well, do I care if an employee of the business is doing something at 8 p.m. and not 3 p.m. in the afternoon? Not really. And so the outcome there is, depending on the role in the company, because there are differences in roles, people should be able and flexible to manage their time effectively, especially during personal versus corporate time. And so and when I say that, it's the business's responsibility to help people do that, to help people be able to schedule that time into their lives.
Yeah, I agree. I think the one problem is that organisations need to be keeping an eye on, in particular, parents, and making sure that they're not burning the candle at both ends and ending up with burnout, because I have heard of a lot of people who work really early in the morning, then get the kids to school and sorted, then do some work, and then the kids are back home, and then they're not working until the kids have gone to bed, and then they start again, and they're not really getting any downtime. So I think it's really important to schedule in the downtime as well as the family time, as well as everything else, as well as the work.
But also, I mean, and I was having this discussion with somebody recently. If I if I'm still writing code at midnight, 1 a.m., I won't fall asleep till 3. My brain just won't shut off.
Yeah.
And then when I do finally shut off, your work blends into what you're thinking about while you're sleeping. And so it is massively important to try and terminate any form of screen use at least an hour before you go to bed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Good. Well, I just want to wrap this part of the session up by giving you some more statistics, because I'm a stato, sorry, I make no apologies for it. The recent fitness industry report said that 36% of people who pay a gym membership go less than 3 times in that year.
I've done that.
So of those 36%, 11% didn't go at all, and 25% went less than 3 times. I just find that unbelievable when you think about what gym membership costs. So I guess what it's really important to take away from this is that it doesn't matter what you do. It has to be something you enjoy, something you get something from, but it doesn't have to be the gym or running or, you know, what we think of as traditional sports. This is about moving.
Yeah, and I like that differentiation on that, because if we stop thinking of it as exercise and just think of it as moving, for some people that can make a massive mental shift that helps them get out of their own way and actually get on and move. Because if
I think a lot of people had such a bad experience of sport at school, bring those memories with them, and that's a barrier to them even starting.
Yeah, absolutely. That whole exercise equals being the last one to be picked at school, and, you know, struggling to get round when it was sports day and all the rest of it. It just has such negative connotations. Whereas movement, find movement that you enjoy and just do it. Just go.
I think also on that, to say that the work at Living Sport that we do with clubs around the county is very much focused on inclusivity and diversity and recreational sport as well as competitive sport. You can't get away from the fact that we have to have competitive sport, but encouraging clubs to be welcoming so that everybody can come and have a go and play, and it doesn't matter if you're a little bit rubbish at it, you can still have a go. And we're very much about celebrating the last person across the line more than the first person across the line sometimes, and we need to switch that thinking up. So
I was always the last on school sports day. My mum loved it. I was always smiling while I came over last.
And my dad was a professional sportsman, and I can't catch, so I've always been a disappointment to him.
Excellent.
So we're going to just turn things around. I'm mindful of the time, so we're going to just take you through the 5 ways to well-being. So Jackie, I'll hand over to you.
So very quickly, 5 ways to well-being, 5 things we can do that helps improve mental health and well-being. And connecting is so important, especially at the moment. If we think about lockdown, think about your colleagues who live alone, people who live maybe in bedsit, small flat, or shared accommodation. Those are the people who have really struggled this year. And those are the people, I think, who organisations recognised that they had to get them back into the normal work environment ahead of others, because they were struggling with poor mental health. And neuroscience shows us that we really do struggle if we live alone. And recently it's been shown that living alone is as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So if you do know anybody who lives alone, then do connect with them, reach out. But equally for yourself, whether you live alone or not, it's really important to connect and to build your social connections and your social network, and make sure that you are taking that time. And I put a post on recently about using our voices, actually talking to somebody rather than emailing and using those electronic methods of connecting, because it's so much more meaningful when we actually hear somebody else's voice. And recognise, if you're talking to somebody, can you listen to hear what they're saying rather than listening to respond? Because that's something that always we do tend to listen to respond rather than hear what's actually going on. And when you ask someone how they are and they say fine, I heard very recently fine being expressed as feelings internalized, never expressed. So rather than accepting that people are fine, why not ask them, yeah, but how are you really? How are you coping with what's going on? What's the impact of this for you? So making that time. The list says giving a colleague a lift to work. The funny thing about that is if you do that, you'd both have to wear a face mask in the car. And I went out between the two lockdowns, went out with a friend in her car, and we both put our face masks on, and she said, I feel like a bank robber now. But we were laughing about it and it was fun. So it was a great thing to do. But find different ways of connecting with people. Now more than ever, it is really important that we are connecting with people.
I think one of the ways that we can do that now that we're allowed to be outside with 5 other people is the walk and talk, which I'm a massive fan of. I've tried weekly to make sure that I meet up with either somebody in my team or somebody who I'm working with externally. So take those opportunities to be outside together if you can. If you share a love of cycling, go cycling together. Use those opportunities to connect, to be active also.
Yeah. And then keep learning. Of course, I'd love people to keep learning, but there have been so many opportunities online to do free learning. There are so many MOOCs out there, and a MOOC is an MOOC, so it's multiple online. I can't remember the last bit, but it's basically free online learning. So you can keep learning and keep your brain active because that does help us to stay sharp. If you want to learn a new skill that's really good for your brain, then you learn a new language because people who are multilingual have been shown to experience less in the way of dementia and Alzheimer's and those degenerative brain diseases. So for sure, learn a new language, but do keep your brain active.
Get on a podcast and do it while you're walking.
Yes.
So giving, to give, this is a really important one. So giving your time to help others, sharing your expertise to help solve a problem, giving ground in an argument that can just save so much stress that possibly doesn't need to be there. I need to learn this one with my daughter, I think. I want to just very briefly focus on the middle of those bullet points there, because I've been doing a lot of outreach work with clubs and talking about how Living Sport can support them. And we are a charity, and don't get me wrong, we need funds to exist and to do the work that we do with disabled people, older people, those with long-term health conditions, those who are in lower socioeconomic groups, who are disadvantaged and have less opportunity to be active. But there is a skills gap in these clubs, and in looking for support for volunteering, I think there's an opportunity for us to work with our business communities to provide expertise. So whether that's in finance or marketing or digital or social or governance, I mean, the list is there. I believe that in these networks, we all have those skills. And through the corporate engagement work that I'm doing, I'm also learning that notion of social responsibility is growing, and that corporates and organizations are looking for opportunities to give back. And it doesn't always have to be financial. So I think if we can have a think about that together, I think we might be able to move forward for mutual benefit for both the clubs who need the support and the organisations that are looking for a way to give back to communities that's not necessarily just handing out coins.
And then the last one is taking notice. So being mindful of what's going on for you right now, rather than trying to always plan for the future. And it's really interesting. I think that coronavirus should hopefully have dispelled the illusion of control. We cannot control the things that are going on outside of us, but what we can control is our response to it. So notice your response to what's going on, and then maybe try some breathing exercises. So there are lots of short breathing exercises, meditations, if you look online, there are lots of mindful breathing, mindful body scan meditations, or just look for meditation. You will find lots of free meditation apps that you can use and listen to just to help you focus back in on the here and now. For me, if I put the kettle on, I think about it, then maybe taking a 3-minute mindfulness breather while the kettle's going, that helps me. Absolutely, having a clear the clutter day on my wall planner for the week between Christmas and New Year. I'm going to be decluttering because I love having a declutter over Christmas and New Year. My husband thinks it's mad, but it's what I like to do, so I do it. When I say I don't clean, I'm extreme. I'm either one end or I'm not at all. So that's my week. Take notice of how others are. I said earlier about, are you reaching out and having those conversations? It was great, the number of people who said, yes, you are. So people do seem to be taking notice more and making those points of listening to each other. Listen to yourself as well. Notice how you're feeling. You cannot pour from an empty cup, so you have to put yourself first. You have to look after you, because if you're not taking responsibility for you and looking after yourself, then who should? You know, it's all of our responsibilities to look after ourselves, to notice if we're struggling, and to reach out and ask for help. It's organisational responsibility to actually create an environment where people feel that they can reach out and ask for help, where people feel they can be honest and open about what's going on for them. And the last one, look up and really pay attention. One thing that I've given therapy clients in the past before as homework is, as they go for a walk, look up and count the chimney pots that are out there. Because when you do that, you pull yourself out of your emotional response to things. And when we look up, we're accessing, we feel better. We actually lift ourselves a bit more. We feel better. So it's naturally good for us to look up and count chimney pots or trees or birds in the tree or whatever's up there. Just look up and pay attention to what's around you.
Thank you. So what are we going to do about this? How are we going to move it forward? I'm really excited to be launching a program called Workplace Movement in January. And this is your opportunity to join my army. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be great. Workplace Movement is a program that supports employers to help their employees be active, and there are various levels that you can access it. At the moment, there are significant amount and really interesting free resource library, documents available in a free resource library, and I'm very happy to share access to that with you. If you want to leave your details in the chat, I'll get Ollie to save the chat before we finish, and I can set that up so you can have access to those resources, which are posters, tips, all kinds of advice about working from home and keeping people moving. So I strongly suggest that you take the opportunity to have a look at those. And then the different steps to workplace movement include staff surveys and benchmarking. There are a series of webinars which build on the information that we've shared with you today that go into more detail. One of which is a physical activity champion webinar, which is the one that I'm most excited about because I think we have a real opportunity in Cambridgeshire to make a difference here. So have a look at the workplace movement information. If you think it's of interest to you, do reach out to me and we'll join the dots. And I just wanted to flag to you also a couple of partners that we're working with. So we work very closely with Everyone Health. We also work very closely with the Clinical Commissioning Group, who have a fantastic campaign running at the moment called BMI Can Do It. So they're on Facebook and they have challenges each month, which are just a little bit different that you can engage with, help you keep motivated. There's accountability there, which I think is one of the key things. So please do feel free to take a look at those. And I also know that Jackie has some courses running next year that she wants to mention to you.
Yes, so next January I will start my 12-month management development program. It will start online. The hope is that middle of the year we'll be able to all come together again as a group. But the program is aimed very much at giving managers the core competencies required to prevent and reduce stress in the workplace. And it's based on the competence matrix as designed by Health and Safety Executive and the CIPD. So it's a 12-month program, half a day a month. Kelly's been on the program and done it many years ago. I think you were on my first or second.
I was a long time ago.
But yeah, it's a good program, and it gives managers those skills and competences they need to be able to identify, reduce stress in the workplace and help people just be themselves at work, which wouldn't it be great if we could all be that? So thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. So we're just going to leave you with some top tips. I'll run through these. So remember, you're not the only one if you're feeling stressed and a bit low. It's really common. And I think, you know, when we were looking at the numbers this year, particularly, they're even stronger than previously. So you're not alone. It's okay not to be okay, as the phrase goes, and do reach out for help, because there is plenty of help out there. And sometimes just by saying it out loud, it makes a huge difference. Aim 150, sorry, Jackie.
Sorry, there's a couple of questions that I wanted to just pick up for you in the chat.
Okay.
So do you know if there are any grants available for charity employers to help make a more active workplace for things like standing desks and things like that? Are you aware of any grants?
I'm not, but I am reaching out to the LEP to see if there are any grants that would match the work that we're doing. So if anything comes to light, I will of course share that. And if anyone here is aware of any suitable grants that they've accessed, please do share with me if it's not come across.
And also, do you have a link to the foot pedal thing you mentioned for DVT? You said get a foot flow device.
Yes, it's RBR leg flow. I will put that in the chat before I go, so everybody can access the link.
Thank you. Sorry, I thought you'd finished.
That's all right, that's fine. So aim for 150 minutes of activity every week. Start small, take those 2 or 3 minutes where you're in between things to do something, as we said, whether that's just walking up and down around the garden, up and down the stairs, star jumps, squat jumps, just keep moving 1 to 2 minutes in every 30 minutes that you've been sat still. Think about the 5 ways to well-being and how you could incorporate those into your day. You'd be surprised how, if you just write those 5 things down on your notebook at the beginning of the day and be mindful of them to make sure that you do think about them during the day, it can be quite a good challenge, good test to yourself. Be active for 10 minutes if you can on your commute, or have a fake commute. Break up that sedentary time and ending where we started, really. Don't suffer in silence. If you're feeling rubbish, if you're feeling low, talk to somebody, because there will always be somebody that's happy to listen and probably won't have all the answers, but can set you on a different path to maybe the one you started at the beginning of the day. So thank you so much for your time. I'm going to stop sharing screen so I can pop some things in the chat. Ollie, can I leave you to take over?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. What's also interesting is that part of your physical health and well-being, there's a huge undercurrent going on at the moment about the foods that we eat, and frankly, we're on that sort of smoking moment around a lot of what we consume food-wise that also impacts our mental health. There's been science around this over the last 5 or 6 years, your microbiome and all these sort of things. But the first step is to understand the physical side and the impact there, and then being able to blend those in. I think it would be fantastic if we could cover the food side of that as well at some point collectively. I've got a little bit of research around that, but it would be great to bring it together, because the big problem as well at the moment is that people working at home, snacking in cupboards, as opposed to planning meals properly, also impacts physical health and well-being, right?
Yeah, well, we work with nutritionalists, so I think there would be the opportunity for us to have a look at that. It's something that we certainly have planned for wellbeing days, wellbeing sessions for next year. So completely agree.
And just a personal thing for the entire of lockdown through November, it was a personal mission not to touch any alcohol this time, because during the first lockdown it became way too easy in the evenings just to go grab a beer or whatever it was. And before you know it, it's not the amount that you're consuming, it's the frequency at which you're consuming that becomes the issue. So yeah, just those sort of personal management pieces. But a fantastic session. The recording will be distributed. John, did you have anything to add?
No, of course, we regard this as really important, and we're certainly hoping to continue to work with both Kelly and Jackie to help and support businesses. I think the real thing it brings home to you is that whilst you know it all, actually putting it into practice yourself is the challenge, you know. Although it seemed quite attractive to me to have a dance around the kitchen with Soraya, as she put on it. I'll look forward to doing that with you sometime, Soraya. But I certainly agree that you know, it is really difficult on the lunchtime meeting aspect, and making sure that we don't get consumed with Zoom and move just from one to the other. So no, really the content was fantastic, and I think we will certainly make sure we get some of that recording out, because it's really important that people really do understand how they need to look after themselves at these very difficult times. So just great thanks to Kelly and Jackie. It's been really interesting and very topical. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's lovely to meet you all.
Thank you. Kelly, there's one question about, will we be sharing the slides, and is there living sports slides? Are you happy to share the slides?
I'm happy to share the slides, of course, that's fine. To the group that attended today.
Yeah, for everyone who attended, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind PDFing those and sending them to me then, and I'll forward on the links and everything else, so that would be good. Did you manage to capture the chat, by the way, Kelly?
I haven't, no. Could you save that for me, please?
I will copy and paste it.
I don't have that opportunity.
I've just saved the chat.
Oh, you've done it. Okay.
Bless you. Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much indeed. And yeah, I really appreciate your time today. And I hope the awards go well. So
yes, of course. I should say
plug.
tonight, 7 p.m. tonight on Facebook. Thank you, Ollie. That's terrible of me to have missed that. We've got our sports awards that we've been working on tirelessly for weeks and months now. Obviously, we would normally have a fabulous gala dinner with 300 people dancing in a room. But as Soraya said, we'll be dancing in our kitchens tonight instead. I love a kitchen disco. Celebrating all that's great about sporting communities, and in this particularly strange year, how people have switched their energy to support their communities where a competitive sport hasn't been possible. There are stories that will make you cry, so mascara warning, but it's a very positive hour of your time that I would be so pleased if you could join us this evening. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for attending. At the top of the hour. Take care and have a good rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.